is now. They started out
bouncing off
when I
of the
started
wall.
with them. They had a little tiny
Otherwise, these are gonna glare something fierce into somebody's face.
I'll pull it up. I have the numbers here.
You should have it on here.
Hopefully I didn't link. There we go. Zoom invitation.
All right, everybody, I got 7 o'clock. I'm going to call to order this regular city council meeting for April 25th, 2023 of the Troutdale City Council. Kendall, let's have roll call, please.
Councilor Ritma.
Excused.
Councilor Caswell.
Here.
Councilor One.
Present.
Councilor White.
Here.
Councilor Wittrin.
Present.
Councilor Glantz.
Present.
We didn't hear Glantz or Ritma, or there?
Caswell.
Councilor Glantz,
Yeah,
can you hear
yeah,
us?
Caswell.
I can hear you.
We can't
Can't hear them.
They can hear us.
Yeah, I guess that's it. Councilor Glantz, can you hear us?
Yeah, she said yes.
Okay.
You want me to keep?
Oh,
there you go.
Gotcha. Thank you, Sandy.
Mayor Lauer.
Here. Do we have any agenda updates, Mr. Ray Young?
No, the only thing for those not in the room, if you see a lighting issue in this room, we are struggling with our lighting working, and if we need our extra lighting, we can point them around.
You've ruined my council meeting after dark joke, but that's fine.
Oh, no, I'll
That's
still
fine.
wait for you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
No, that's fine. We have a little ambiance going on tonight. It's kind of nice inside council chambers. I'm going to go ahead and move on to agenda item number 2, public comment. Public comment on agenda and non-agenda items is welcome at this time. Public comment on agenda items will be taken at the time the item is considered. Public comment should be directed to the presiding officer and limited to matters of community interest or related to matters which may or could come before council. Each speaker shall be limited to 5 minutes for each agenda item unless a different amount of time is allowed by the presiding officer with consent of the council. The council and mayor should avoid immediate or protracted responses to citizen comments. We'll go ahead and open up public comment. If anybody on Zoom wishes to make a comment, go ahead and unmute yourself, state your name and city of residence for the record. All right, not seeing anybody on Zoom. Anybody in council chambers tonight wishes to make a comment, now's the time. Go ahead and approach the desk and state your name and city of residence for the record.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Kevin Mansfield, and I live in Portland. I want to thank you guys for inviting me here tonight to share with you a little bit about my story. I've been a public policy ambassador with Michael J. Fox Foundation for the last 10 years. I've been a facilitator with Parkinson's Resources of Oregon for the last 21 years, and I was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2001. I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor, and City Council for claiming the town of Troutdale, I can't remember where I am, as April as being National Parkinson's Awareness Month. It means a lot to me, and it'll mean a lot to the people that live here locally. We have a support group that meets in Gresham on the second Tuesday of the month at 2 o'clock, from 2 to 3. Any of you or anybody is welcome to come. If you can't make it, give me an email address if you want, and you can join us by Zoom. I have a hybrid meeting. Excuse me if I lose my train of thought. This disease gets to me. I'd like to give you a little information about my history and how much Parkinson's has grown. When I was diagnosed in 2001, I went to my doctor, and she told me that I had Parkinson's. Come back and see her in 6 months, and that was it. So I went home and I did the wrong thing and looked on the computer, and all that did is made me more depressed and upset because it talked about all of the advanced stages of Parkinson's. I kept doing research and stuff, and I found Parkinson's Resources of Oregon. They're very kind people. They talked to me for an hour to 2 hours on the phone, calming me down, explaining about it being a slow progression disease. And they asked me if I wanted to join a support group, which I, of course, said yes. At that time, they had a waiting list. So it took them a couple months, and they got back to me, and I went to a first support group meeting. We had an office, well, smaller than this, was doctor's office down at Good Sam Hospital, conference room, I think. And there was 45 of us in that room. It was standing room only. So we met there for a couple months, and then we ended up separating. And then shortly after that, they asked me to be a facilitator. At that time, there was approximately 12 to 14 support groups in Oregon and Southwest Washington. Today, 21 years later, we have 55 to 60 Parkinson's support groups throughout the state of Oregon. That's just how much it's grown in the last 20 years. Sorry. I get probably an average last 6 to 9 months or so, about 1 to 3 families per month calling me, telling me that they were newly diagnosed and want to know about Parkinson's. Yesterday, I had a family that called me that lives here in Troutdale, telling me they had Parkinson's. So you guys, we have it here in the city. It doesn't matter how old you are anymore. Parkinson's used to be not talked about until people were in their 60s, 70s, 80s. I was in my early to mid 40s when I was diagnosed and put me out of the workforce. Every year up until the pandemic and stuff, we went back to Washington, D.C. for 4 days for a conference. On our last day, we went up to Capitol Hill and talked to our congressmen. But going up on Capitol Hill, I met 2 women that was 32 years old, having their first babies that was diagnosed with Parkinson's. I met a gentleman that was 22 years old that was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And then just before the pandemic, I was at a health fair, and I was talking to an older gentleman, and we were talking about Parkinson's and stuff about it, and he started kind of crying, tears and stuff in his eyes. And I felt bad because I thought maybe I said something, so I asked him if I said something to offend him or make him upset. He said no, that it was a very rare disease or time, but his 8-year-old grandson was diagnosed with Parkinson's. So it doesn't matter how old we are anymore, what race we are, or anything. We figured that there's about 1 million people in the United States that are diagnosed with Parkinson's. We figured that there was probably 60,000 people that were diagnosed a year. Well, found out on December 15th, there was 3 organizations of the Michael J. Fox Foundation, the Parkinson's Foundation, and the Institute of Clinical Evaluation Services all did a study. And we figured now that we're 50% higher than what we figured before, that now there's an estimated number of 90,000 people a year diagnosed with Parkinson's. We figure we have an estimate of 15 to 22,000 people here in the state of Oregon with Parkinson's, and it's growing. It's just recently become number 1 neurological disease. We figure in the next 20 years it's going to double. We're going to call the pandemic Parkinson's. It's just sad to say that that's how fast it's growing and how much we need to find cures for. That's the information I have for you guys. I just wanted to educate you a little bit and tell you how important it is and how much we appreciate you doing this to us. Of course, it will mean a lot. I get the proclamation, I'll share it with the support group. I'll be sharing it with Parkinson's Resources of Oregon. I'll also be sharing it with the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. It's good. Appreciate you telling us your story. All right, anybody else in council chambers wishes to make public comment? Now's the time. Approach the desk.
Thank you, Mayor. Adrian Hester, Troutdale. I wanted to express my appreciation and gratitude to the city resources, the volunteers, and the Reynolds students who put in so much hard work on the Earth Day cleanup, particularly at the Helen Altos Park. It looks a lot better. They did a lot of good work back there, and if I can be absolutely selfish about it, they made the view out my back door a whole lot nicer. So I just wanted to say that for the record, and I appreciate all the hard work and all of the resources that went into planning it, and well done.
Thank you, Mr. Kester, appreciate it. All right. Hi.
I am Lynette Trayhorn, here from Troutdale. I am coming here to talk about the homeless that is in our downtown. It is completely out of control. I wrote to you, you're probably gonna get an email about it. I spoke to 3 other businesses down there. It's bad, and there's people that don't feel safe. I had a coworker, so I went into my work early in the morning, 8:30 on Sunday. There was a lady across the street in the lawyer's alcove, everything, her bedding, her alcohol, her cigarettes, everything. There was a guy that took over Troutini's front porch. I watched the lady go and use the restroom behind his car. I left and a coworker came in, and I work at Sage Two Salon, and I was talking to her about it today, and she wouldn't even leave out the front door because there was someone leaning up against the door using the outlets to charge their phone and would not leave, would not move. So she had to unblock our side door and have her and her client go out that way. They leave their garbage in front of our doorways. I spoke to Richard, the lawyer. He had to clean up cigarettes, alcohol, sweep up. I told him that I saw the lady use the restroom behind his car. I spoke with the people in the coffee shop. There's a young girl that works in there. She's a teenager. She told me that there's a guy there that will go in and stay all day and will not leave, and she's too scared to get him out of there. He was upset with her one day because her coffee is too much, and so he threw their coffee stirrers at her and cussed her out. And you know, the lady that works in, it looks like an Oregon store. It's a bunch of like wooden stuff. Mm-hmm. She said she had a lady that was like probably schizophrenic or something in there, and she just let her back out. But the young girl asked me, like, I gave her my number and said, I can be there in 15 seconds if you want to call me. She doesn't know me, but she's there by herself a lot of the times. And I didn't drive down the street more, but there could have been 5 more. And I know that a lot of people are gonna say, we need to be more compassionate. Well, they have programs that are offered to them, and I think it's unfair for us who have lived here our whole lives, or anybody working down here, to deal with this. And we need help.
Yes.
Because this is my coworker's problem. If she approached it, that person could have beat her up. And it's a problem. And then I've got another issue up on Hensley, past, I think is it Red Sunset on Hensley?
Yeah. Or no, Sunset Park.
Sunset Park, yes. So there's apartments up there, and a lot of people park there. Well, there are many of cars that are being stripped. People are living in them. I mean, you can hardly drive because they're parked on both sides. And there's a white Suburban up there that's like has no windows. There was another car that was jacked up and tarps over it, and it's I don't know what's happened. I grew up here, and this is a huge change, and I don't know that I have noticed the homeless problem as soon as I should have, I guess. That's what I have to say, and I hope that we get some backup here and something happens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Mayor, if I could add a couple things
Yeah.
while Lynette is still here. Thank you, Lynette. You don't have to convince me of anything.
Or us.
Or the council. This recent event is something that we've worked really hard to keep them out of town, out of visibility. This is the last 4 or 5 days. We contacted the sheriff's office on Sunday. They sent someone down. The person was gone Sunday when they went down there. Captain Asbo has already responded to me this evening before you came up that he's going to have extra patrols on deputies in the morning. Deputy Bohr, the resource officer, should be reaching out to you personally to talk to you about the situation. So he's already been assigned that duty to come down and talk to you. And if anybody feels threatened, this is for everybody out there in radio land and in the room. If you feel threatened, call 911 immediately. Don't call non-emergency. If you feel threatened at all, that's 911. And if there's any chronic issues, Lynette, here's my card with my cell number on it. Call me, please. This annoys me to no end, and I'm happy to push the sheriff's office.
Can I give this number to at least the girl that works?
Yep.
Okay.
You can.
Thank you.
It's not a secret number. Anyway, thank you. So yes, we are definitely jumping on this one immediately, and he's gonna talk to the patrol about checking down there immediately. Hopefully tomorrow morning you should see deputies around. Great, thank you for coming.
Appreciate it.
Good afternoon. My name is Saul Pompeyo, and I'm the owner of Restaurante de Pompeyo. And I come here to ask to help. And we go to have a nice event next month. And I hear about one of the guest vendors can sell alcohol outside to the customers and they can walk. I already sent ask information to Marlene. I have the email. If the guest vendor can sell alcohol to the guest can walk, the another business who wants to do the same. I already asked to Madeline what is the paperwork we need to do for participate in the event, you know, because it can do a very good business if we can sell beer and the people walking around. Even another thing I submit, if we need any permit for serving food outside, I put a small stand outside for food. I hope so you guys help us to submit all the paperwork so we can participate in the event like another guest vendors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sal.
I
Appreciate
have
it.
here the email because
If you want to give it to Kenda,
Okay.
that way we can have it. Thank you. Appreciate it, Sal. Anybody else wishes to make public comment? All right, not seeing anybody else. I'm gonna go ahead and close public comment. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna move on to agenda item number 3, consent agenda. 3.1 minutes, January 24th, 2023 regular meeting, February 28th, 2023 work session, February 28th, 2023 regular meeting, and March 14th, 2023 regular meeting. And then agenda item number 3.2, resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Portland for a regional disaster preparedness organization coordinated grant to update emergency operations plan. Sorry. No, it's the top one above the door. I don't think there's a thing up there. I'm just slowly moving closer to Councilor 1. Do I have a motion to approve consent agenda?
I had one question on 3.2. Is that an ongoing grant that we've been involved in, or is this brand new?
This is brand new, and if Councilor Glantz wants to raise her hand and advocate to leaving it on the consent agenda, her and Councilor Wendy from Fairview worked really hard with the RDPO to get us that $200,000 grant that will help all 3 cities to be able to update their emergency management plan. It's a one-time grant.
Yeah, we actually, we actually started this like 2 years ago. It's been quite a process. And it was one of those where we were both newly assigned to RDPO and then realized that our own city, emergency plans were very much out of date. So we went through the process and got the grants, and they're finally coming through, thanks to Ray for putting in all that technical detail too.
Great.
There's no matching funds. That's one of the things I was really pleased about. Just effort.
I move adoption of the consent agenda 3.1 and 3.2.
Second.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, passes. Thank you. Now I'm gonna see if I can get in a, oh, now it's passed. All right, I've moved past the sun. All right, Ray has given me the nickname of the proclamation mayor, so I'm gonna earn that tonight.
I have proclaimed it.
He has proclaimed it. So we're gonna move on to agenda item number 4, proclamations. Bear with me for a second, I do not have a paper copy. All right. We have the first proclamation for Arbor Day, 4.1. City of Troutdale Proclamation Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, I, Randy Lauer, Mayor of the City of Troutdale, do hereby proclaim April 22nd, 2023 as Arbor Day in the City of Troutdale. And I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Dated this day, 25th day of April 2023. Thank you. We're going to move on next to agenda item 4.2, City of Troutdale Proclamation Volunteer Appreciation Week, observed April 16th through the 22nd of 2023. Whereas National Volunteer Week debuted in the United States in 1974 and has grown exponentially each year, drawing endorsements from presidents, governors, mayors, and other elected officials. And whereas Volunteer Week is an opportunity to recognize the impact of volunteer service and the power of volunteers to tackle society's greatest challenges, to build stronger communities, and be a force to transform that transforms the world. And whereas it has been a long-standing tradition in Troutdale for individuals, families, youth groups, civic groups, and local businesses to volunteer to make a difference in our community by serving on city committees, assisting the community events such as First Friday and Earth Day, adopting a park, and many other community beautification projects. And whereas the City of Troutdale wishes to recognize these individuals, groups, and organizations for their dedicated efforts towards developing a sense of community, spirit, and pride through their service. Now, therefore, let us honor, celebrate, and thank those volunteers in our community who share their time, energy, knowledge, and abilities by proclaiming the week of April 16th through the 22nd as Volunteer Appreciation Week in the City of Troutdale. In so doing, I, Randy Lauer, the Mayor of Troutdale, call upon all citizens to help renew and sustain the Troutdale community spirit by committing themselves to address the needs of our community through volunteer action, dated this 25th day of April 2023. Troutdale and many other communities wouldn't be what they are without our volunteers, and that includes my fellow counselors sitting next to me and on Zoom. So thank you very much to all of you. And then thank you, Mr. Mansfield, for again telling us your story. We really appreciate it. I don't have, honestly, to be fair, I don't know if I have a history of Parkinson's in my family. I'm adopted, so I don't know my family or my family's medical history, but I appreciate it again, giving us a peek into what it's been like for you moving forward, how much you help those around the state of Oregon and other areas as well. City of Troutdale proclamation, Parkinson's Awareness Month, April 2023. Whereas Parkinson's disease affects 1 million people in the United States, is the second most common neurodegenerative disease in the United States, including more than 20,000 people in Oregon, and the number is expected to more than double by the year 2040. Whereas it is estimated that Parkinson's costs $52 billion every year, of which the federal government shoulders $29 billion, leaving American families to cover the remaining $29 billion. And whereas the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research is dedicated to finding a cure for Parkinson's disease through an aggressively funded research agenda and to ensuring the development of improved therapies for those living with Parkinson's today. And whereas there are millions of Americans who are caregivers, family members, and friends greatly impacted by Parkinson's disease, and whereas it is estimated that 90,000 individuals are diagnosed annually with Parkinson's disease in North America, 50% higher than the 60,000 annual diagnoses that research previously suggested. Now, therefore, we, the City of Troutdale, therefore, we, the Troutdale City Council, do hereby proclaim April as Parkinson's Awareness Month in the City of Troutdale, dated this 25th day of April 2023. So again, thank you very much for your story. Thank you for all of the volunteers in and around East County and Troutdale specific, and then go plant a tree in celebration of whatever you want to celebrate. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to take a breath for a second and move on to agenda item number 5. A presentation from the 40 Mile Loop Land Trust. Jim, I'm gonna butcher your last name. Let me try. Sulin. Cholin?
Yeah.
The
I'm not saying it correctly either.
The 40 Mile Loop Land Trust. The floor is yours. Thank you very much. And I apologize for that.
Happens all the time. So I have 13 slides that will show you a little bit of an update of the 40 Mile Loop. But first, I just want to say who I am. I'm a volunteer board member with the 40 Mile Loop Land Trust. And we're an all-volunteer organization, nonprofit organization. We, as an organization, have been working for 40 years or more, nonstop on assembling what is a 150-mile-long trail system that touches every urbanized area in Multnomah County. And so we've been working at this forever. We made some good progress last year. We want to report in and tell you what's happening, and also reacquaint you with the loop. So I think the way this works is you're going to hit the button. So
Just tell me when.
okay. Well, first up, we have our master plan, which started this whole process. There was some planning. There were planning efforts even prior to this, but the 1983 plan, which by the way is 40 years ago, next month is when it was issued, was the first real articulation of the entire 40 Mile Loop system. And the system today looks rather much like what you see on the right. We haven't deviated from that. There have been a couple of opportunities to add trails like the Peninsula Crossing Trail in North Portland. And you don't really see the Gresham Fairview Trail on that map. But of course, that's a wonderful facility that we have out this direction. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is the 40 Mile Loop today. Again, as I said, it's 150 miles. There's another slide where we can talk about what the colors, the different colors of the different segments mean. But in general, real quickly, that orangey red color are completed segments, and the yellow sections are gaps. The purple over on the left is a pedestrian trail system that we have on the west side of Portland. Market Nature Park goes through the Arboretum. Wildwood Trail is the main trail over there. Next slide. So it is an assemblage of trails, and here are them by name. You may know them by their individual names, but altogether they make up the loop. And there's a couple that are sort of off to the right. We'll have a different view of that later. Next slide. As I said, it's 150 miles Why is it called the 40-mile loop then, right? So the next two slides, I think, go into that. Oh, no, it's the two after this one. That's okay. This, stay here for a second.
Okay.
So this is the color code. And so the green sections, I should point out, are really good news. Those are gaps that are now funded. And we had some successes, as I mentioned earlier. Then we have special issues on some sections as well. Question marks, you see those. This is our map. It's not a government map. It's a map that helps us keep track of where we are as we struggle to complete this system. And it has been a struggle. It's been a lot of work that's gone into this. Next slide. Including the funded gaps, we'll be approaching 73.5% completed. So people have to take us seriously now that we're over 70%. So we just crossed over the 70% completion mark. And this does include the trails that have been funded but not built yet. Next. And here are the projects. 2022, we had, this was a period where Metro decided how to allocate its bond measure funds. So regional voters passed a Metro bond measure that is used to protect open space, natural areas primarily, but they also had a component to extend the trail system. So anything that was in the regional trail system was eligible for funding. And we were fortunate to have 6 projects funded through that process. 5 of them are from the bond measure. One of them is a federal fund source called RUFA, which is Regional Flexible Fund Allocation. I don't expect anybody except transportation nerds to really understand that. I happen to be one, apparently. So 20 million, that's the most money we've seen since 30 million was allocated for the Bearcats at East Bank Esplanade. And I'm really happy to see that the projects were dispersed broadly around the loop. The eastern portion of the loop did very well. Next slide. These are the projects that are underway or will be underway. The bubbles that are in the white color are the 6 projects that we just talked about through the bond measure and the RUFA funds. But we also have some other things that were going on prior to that with funding from other sources. So the Marine Drive Trail, Gresham Gap is one of those. I think Metro and the city of Gresham are working on that. And that's a 2/3 mile gap in the Marine Drive Trail from about 185th over to Blue Lakes Park. And so it'd be nice to have that one closed. Ray, this is a nominated name, right? The Wobbin Trail?
Yeah, Wobbin Trail, right now, we're processing it through the Chinook tribe and the Grand Ronde tribe to make sure they concur that it's an appropriate name. And so as soon as that's done, we hope by June, we should have it on the council's agenda by June or before.
So what's going on out there? I'll bet every one of you have been on the trail north of the airport. It's an isolated segment, that orange section out there. It's, I think it's a little over a mile long. It's been there since 2008. So now we're looking forward to having it connected to the rest of the system. So there's a project on the west end of that where the Wobbin Trail note is, but also south of it, I think it's covered by the yellow triangular thing. So there's the trail will also connect down to the I-84 bridge crossing where there's a beautiful bicycle pit path hanging on the south side of the bridge.
If I could add to that for you, it's the portion from our Harlow Road on the north side of 84. Then it's going to hit the east end, that field on the east end of the airport, and Port of Portland is going to be paving that whole trail section from there down to the ramp that goes up to the paved portion Jim was talking about up on the levee. So that'll be great. That started later this year. It will start later this year.
Right. Then otherwise, we have some projects. Let's see, there's a tiny little project in Gresham Fairview. So if you've ridden the Gresham Fairview Trail on a bike, you know that there was a section that was completed from Burnside to Halsey in 2008. there was a section completed from the Springwater with a bridge over Powell Boulevard all the way up to Ruby Junction in 2010. But the two pieces never were quite connected. And I remember the first time, I still remember when I wrote it, I went through the railroad baffles and, well, where now? You know? So PGE owned an intervening parcel. So the smallest little gap is going to get closed, but it's very important. It will bring you right to the signalized crossing over Burnside. So that's a good one. Then the two sort of buff color or yellow, maybe, I don't know what color I use there. Those are privately funded projects. So as a condition of development in Southwest Portland, the Willamette Greenway will finally get extended north of the spaghetti factory, if that puts it on the map for you. It's about, I don't know, it's less than 1,000 feet, but it will connect to other sections that are completed north of there. And then the University of Portland in North Portland is developing a lower campus below the traditional campus they have up on Willamette Boulevard. And it's athletic facilities that they're putting down there, so they're practice fields, and I think also a rowing facility on the Willamette River. Also, as a condition of development, they have to build a North Portland Greenway trail section in that area. So all of these projects are projects that are underway. Just as soon as you guys can sign your intergovernmental agreement with Metro, you'll be able to get going on the Sandy River Greenway project. So that we look forward to having all of these things done. Congratulations to City of Troutdale for doing all the work that you did on the Sandy River Greenway and writing a strong proposal to Metro to help this system along. Thank you very much. For our end, we don't operate anything, we advocate, and we wrote letters of support for the Troutdale projects, and we've written letters of support for a current grant application that you have in with the Oregon Community Paths to close a shortfall in the Wobbin Trail section, a funding shortfall there, and also a funding shortfall in the Arbor Road section that Mayor Lauer just mentioned. So fingers crossed for that. Next slide, please. So this is kind of a close-up of projects that are funded, and I didn't mention the one on the very right. I think we got there's a congressional earmark for Jordan Road to tie Jordan Road back to the I-84 bridge crossing, I believe. And then next to that, you see what we call the Sandy River Greenway, and it goes under the railroad bridge and will come back up to Depot Park and tie into the historic Columbia River Highway State Trail, which goes all the way to the Dalles. So things are coming together. And then the piece above that with the little yellow circle with the white triangle, that's one of the two sections where we have current funding application in to Oregon Community Paths. That is at the east end of the airport, as you can see. And then obviously the other one on that same route at the top center, that is going to be complete from Sundial Road west. Wait, excuse me, not Sundial, west to Sundial Road. I may be wrong there. At any rate, we still have a little acquisition work to do at the west end of that to make a really nice connection into the Marine Drive Trail, but we'll be working on that. And Metro still has funding available to do acquisition for trails. So if you have these needs, if you agree with us that those are important, it's probably a good thing to get in touch with Metro. And then there's at the upper left, we have the Gresham piece. It led off the screen here, but that's 2/3 of a mile back to the city of Portland's limits at 181st, I think that is. And then the Gresham Fairview Trail is getting unstuck, and it is funded from Halsey north towards Sandy. That's that left-hand bubble. So it will be nice to see that completed as well. There's still a piece of Gresham Fairview Trail. We need to go around Gresham's treatment plant and connect with Fairview Lakeway and make our way up to Marine Drive. Marine Drive is coming together. After these projects are done, there will be 3 gaps, 2 of them in Portland, and this tiny little gap up here. That's it, on Marine Drive, 23 miles will be almost complete. One of the Portland gaps actually is tied up with the interstate bridge crossing, and whenever that bridge gets built, there will be a trail connection underneath it that will cure one of our 2 gaps in Portland. Okay, finally, I think I need to tell you where the 40-mile loop main comes from. Is that the next slide? I don't know my sequence here. It is. Okay, so this is a Portland story. My apologies, but it is. I mean, this is the first sort of regional park plan for the city of Portland that was done in 1903, 1904 by John Charles Olmsted, who is the stepson of Frederick Law Olmsted, probably most famous of all of the initial landscape architects that we had in this country. So John Charles came to Portland, did kind of a rapid tour of the city, wrote the report, but the story is that the Portland Parks Board was too cheap to have them draw a map of the system. So it's all described very thoroughly in the report. But then C.P. Kaiser was director of Portland Parks from 1919 to 1949. He was trying really hard to implement the Olmsted plan. And you can see on the map on the right, part of what Olmsted really promoted was carriageways or boulevards to link Portland parks. He believed that that added tremendous value. Okay, so here's a guy who worked on it for 30 years while he was parks director, and nobody is parks director for 30 years anymore. It's an incredible thing in and of itself. So next slide, please. So, but the plan wasn't totally forgotten. And so Doug Bridges was park director in the mid to late 70s. And he knew about this plan. Oregon State Parks wanted to connect Triumph Creek to the Willamette Greenway and to the West Hills Trails. And then Doug was at a meeting and said, well, take a look at this. And so people started thinking bigger. And the idea was born to have a trail system that connected Portland to Gresham, to Fairview, to Troutdale, and even on the spring water on the way back, rushes through Milwaukee. So it was really a big sort of leap of faith for the 40-mile loop to take this idea to that kind of scale. So this little instrument that is up there is called an opposometer. So it's in your desk bottom drawer next to your slide rule, probably. And so Barbara Walker on our board described what happened, that somebody on Doug Bridges' staff took this little, she called it a little pizza cutter-like device with a wheel on it, and ran it around the map, and it came out that it was about 40 miles. So the name just stuck. Now you know.
It rolls off the tongue better than the 150 miles.
Well, yeah, and you know, it's actually, along the way, it's been 140 miles, and now it's 150, so yeah, so identity thing. Next slide, please. So the 40-mile loop now is part of a regional trail system as envisioned by Metro. So in the mid-90s, actually early 90s, Metro started what they call green space planning, and as part of that, we started talking about trails in the region. So this again is just a different version of the map that I created here, and you can see a kind of regional point of view. The 40-mile loop sits in sort of the upper right third of this whole system. And just to show you that people are thinking bigger than that even, next slide shows some really exciting sort of ex-urban kinds of trail projects that are happening. Maybe you've heard of the Salmonberry Trail. Not a lot of people have, but it's going to connect from the Banks Vernonia Trail westward on an old rail line all the way to Tillamook. There are 9 tunnels. I don't even know how long this thing is, but it's a huge project. If you want to volunteer for your next lifetime project, this is one. But they're doing really good work. This is the Salmonberry Trail, and you know all about the historic Columbia River Highway Trail. What we're showing there are the sections in orange that you share with vehicles, and then then the red sections are sort of you're separated from traffic. The little green section out there shows that we're funded to go through Mitchell Point, which is underway now, being worked on. But you may not know that there's a Yamhill Trail, Yamhill County, 14-mile trail south of Gaston down to Minville. And then Clark County owns a rail line that goes all the way to the Yale Dam. That's the end of the presentation. Again, thank you very, very much for your good work in helping us complete this system.
Thank you, I appreciate it, Jim. Thanks for the history lesson.
Okay.
That was awesome. And is there any comments or questions from council?
No, I bike all the time on the down Marine Drive and
Yeah.
out to Portland and back, and so I think this is awesome. It's kind of fun to see the history behind it, and so thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, Earl Blumenauer, and when he was a county commissioner, and Don Clark, when he was county executive for Multnomah County, they were all over the 40 mile. They loved it because if you remember, Blue Lake was a county park, and James Leeson Boat Ramp and Rotten Beach area, that was a county park too. They wanted to have a way for people to get there. So they were all in on this project when it got planned out. They even had Multnomah County gas tax to fund it. So those sections on Marine Drive Trail that are around the airport, and you know, have you ever ridden on the really bumpy section?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So that was, Multnomah County did that years and years ago, 1970. I think that bumpy section needs some repair work.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. But yeah, it's great. That's super cool to hear about all this and see, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for what you're doing.
Yeah, appreciate the presentation.
Anything else, Ray? You good?
Nope, that's perfect. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Jim, for coming.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on to agenda item number 6, a discussion on Southeast Sandy Avenue during snow ice events. Mr. Travis Holton, Public Works Director. The,
Mayor, someone's snapping.
Public comment, sir. On the last topic?
on the presentation?
No,
All right, let's go to public comment on the presentation.
And I will ask Jim to hang out just in case he may raise any questions for me.
Yeah.
Thank you, please. Hey, guys, appreciate you having me here tonight. How about this first, like, nice sunny day where it's about 60 degrees, makes me want to be on the trail instead of in here. Honestly, the 40-mile loop, the whole trailer thing sounds absolutely amazing. I love the concept. I love the idea of our families here in Troutdale being able to go out and use that and do those things. But I find it, at this point in time, in our current state of affairs, it might be quite utopian and glossing over many of the actual livability issues that plague the communities where these trails go through. By the way, my name is Will Knight, Troutdale resident since 2001, and long-time Citizens Advisory Committee member. Thank you very much for your time and attention tonight. Apologize when I put these on. I turned 45, my eyes went bad on me, so here we go. A lot of history tonight coming in with that 40-mile loop. I also wanted to start and share some additional background information and history that you may or may not have regarding this project in Troutdale. In February of 2017, Metro held a meeting regarding the Springwater Trail coming into Troutdale. Well, what does the Springwater Trail have to do with the 40-mile loop, you ask? Well, let me tell you, if you didn't know already, they're the exact same thing. The 40-mile loop land trust goals include pushing the continuation of the Springwater Trail into Gresham and Troutdale. The 40-mile loop is the Springwater Trail. They are one and the same. The connection is a direct extension of all the issues of the Springwater Trail into downtown Troutdale and our surrounding neighborhoods. All they did was stop using the Springwater name and use the 40-mile loop instead. I feel like it was a deliberate attempt to distance the term Springwater Trail and all of its problems from the now preferred name, the 40-mile loop. Again, they're one and the same. Well, let's get back to that 2017 meeting that happened in February of 2017. Metro held a meeting at the church across the street, and they were asking the public for input regarding their plans to extend the Springwater Trail through town, connecting Depot Park with Mountain Community College. That's the next segment that they'd like to extend and connect. During that meeting, over 200 Troutdale residents showed up in overwhelming opposition to connecting Troutdale to the Springwater Trail. Much of the discussion centered around safety, drug abuse, crime, and livability concerns, especially illegal long-term camping. The citizens spoke so loudly and cried out for their elected officials to help in this matter that it ended up working. The public was so opposed to the idea that Metro immediately stopped their plans to build a trail through town. Well, I thought that kind of should have been the end of it. It's like, that should have been on notice. The people do not want this. Well, here we are tonight, and I find it incredible that the project that was booed out of both Gresham and Troutdale is back again tonight and thanking us for the hard work that we've done with the Confluence connection, making the work happen for them. Now, again, there's several unfinished projects, parts of this 40-mile Springwater Trail loop, the most important of which that we need to be very conscious about is this connection from downtown Troutdale and Depot Park through our neighborhood next to our brand new elementary school and out to Mountain Community College. Troutdale invested in the elementary school to try to attract families to our town. How attractive will Troutdale be to families when the Springwater Trail is right next to the playground their kids are going to play on? I find it egregious for a group outside of our community to voice their pet projects onto our community when we have overwhelmingly spoken out against it. I find it irresponsible that they would continue to try and push new trails without any plan or thought about maintaining order over the increasingly dangerous situations that are currently curated on those existing trails. It wasn't even mentioned tonight in the presentation, not even a thought or even a whisper of trying to say what's going to happen with our community when they bring these things through. I also find it interesting that instead of actually addressing the public's very valid concerns, they'd rather just change the name and hope nobody notices it while it gets snuck under the radar. You know, some of the stakeholders and folks pushing this are so out of touch with the community and the reality that I'll read from you one of the quotes from the meeting in 2017 when Metro Councilor Shirley Craddock came up and was addressing people's concerns about illegal long-term camping, came up and said, quote, "Camping is not allowed on the trails," which drew a raucous roar from an otherwise well-behaved crowd gathered for a trail open house on Wednesday, February 22nd. They just came in and told you guys tonight that they have the funding and they're going to push forward. I leave this with you guys, and we'll leave this with you guys. 6 years ago, the citizens of both Gresham and Troutdale came together and emphatically said no to Metro. We don't want this in our town. They turned down and left. I asked you guys, what has changed in those last 6 years? Have things surrounding the Springwater Trail gotten better or worse? Have the unhoused populations, drug abuse, mental illness, and crime rates that your citizens spoke loudly against gotten better? External advocates are pushing for a neat toy. How does connecting the problems of the Springwater Trail to our elementary school or our downtown improve the lives of the families here in Troutdale? Will it increase or decrease the number of public comments about livability concerns at the beginning of the meetings? What outreach have you done to pull the people to ask what they want? What proof do you have that a majority of your constituents want Springwater Trail to go next to their elementary school? I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Ray Young.
Thank you. I was also at that meeting in 2017.
So was I.
And there are no plans, no desire, no hidden agendas whatsoever. Make very clear about the misinformation out there. There is no plan to proceed down the route through Troutdale to connect to the Springwater Trail. That has died. Jim agrees it's died. Metro has told me that it's died. Once it got shot down in 2017, that has never been raised again as a legitimate route to connect to the Springwater Trail. The plan that we have worked with Metro, and Jim and I talked about the other day, that everybody seems to think best, is that the way to connect our bike hub to the Springwater Trail. Side note, Springwater Trail only covers that portion of the 40-mile loop that goes from Boring down to Selwood in the Willamette River. That is its own name of Springwater Trail. The 40-mile loop is bigger and goes beyond that. But the route that we've talked about to connect the Springwater Trail, because you need to have a loop, is to go down Halsey through the Main Streets on Halsey program, and as we enhance safety along Halsey down and meet the Fairview Trail at 201st, 200 at Halsey. So that is the way that we are pursuing. The 40-mile loop trust understands that, Metro understands that. So nothing that Jim said tonight gave any indication that that plan was resurrected. It died in 2017 and nobody is pushing it since. I just want to assure Will, nobody is pushing it. And we know the citizens spoke loud and clear in 2017, and we are making sure that doesn't happen. And one of the things that Jim and I have talked about, and Travis of Public Works, that if there are any discussions, if ever down the road, it would begin with a listening session and a discussion among Troutdale citizens. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. I'm very sensitive to it too. I heard everybody in 2017. It ain't going that way, guys.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Is that enough, Jim?
Good evening, Mayor Lauer, City Councilors, Tanny Stephenson, Troutdale resident, and I also serve on the board of the Sandy Drainage Improvement Company. And that group is responsible for the levee system that runs along the Columbia all the way down to basically the Delta Park area. And a couple of things, we're looking at doing a trail connection, which I think is already in the works. But there are some things that come along with this. And I don't know if you've driven down Marine Drive or 33rd Avenue at any point in the last few years, but frankly, the people that are using the trail are not the little kids on the bikes and the joggers and the bikers for the most part. They are members of the homeless community. And a concern, I can tell you that the Drainage District, we've spent $131,000 so far this year working with the homeless, and in excess of $200,000 for security. We have had to outfit our employees with bulletproof vests and have to have armed security go with them so we can go in and work on the levees and the pump stations. That's the environment that we've got. I'm all for trails and things, but the other concern is our staff has told me that we're going to be in excess of an additional $20,000 for cleanup and homeless just by connecting that stretch off of Marine Drive from where the Fairview Trail ends, just because of the activity that's going to come along with it. And I guess something to think about with this is we're talking about the environment, and there's a significant amount of cleanup. You're talking motor oil, transmission fluid, hydraulic fluid, brake fluid, you know, I can go on and on and on, human feces, things like that, the needles that we're dealing with that we're having to keep from going into the river or deal with them when they get into the river. And a lot of the land that the levee sits on is owned by the businesses that are adjacent to that. And the land that isn't owned by those businesses is owned by the city. So I think it's something that should be considered because there is going to be a cost and effect from this. And the other thing is there's an issue with the trail on the levee and the airport. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And Port of Portland spoke to this a couple weeks ago. And Marv Vidilla, who ran a business at the airport and passed away recently, just a few weeks ago, this was something he was very concerned about because in order to do that, the way that I understand this is the alpha approach to the runway will be taken out. And that will make it very, very difficult to handle jet traffic at the airport.
And many of us have fought long and hard to keep that airport functional. And I just think these things should all be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Appreciate your time.
Anybody else in council chambers?
Rich Allen, Troutdale, Mayor, Council. As many of you know, I spent many of my younger years homeless, which gives me a different perspective than many. And I gotta say, what you're hearing here in the initial public comment and the comments on this particular subject of the trails are similar, one and the same. That although bad behavior may make you homeless, being homeless does not make bad behavior. And what we see here is when our community turns a blind eye to bad behavior and starts accepting it, people don't like that. We need to enforce our laws and realize that bad behavior and homeless are not necessarily the same.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate it. Anybody else in council chambers? Anybody on Zoom wishes to make a comment? Now's the time. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Thank you, Mr. Knight, for calling me on that. I will say that Jim doesn't represent Metro, and the presentation tonight wasn't a presentation by Metro. We're efforting to try to get our new Metro counselor, Ashton Simpson, to come before council to answer these questions. And when we do get him and put him on a future agenda, I would encourage all of you to come and bring the same comments to him. It's the same comments that we had for then Councilor Craddock, who Mr. Knight said, more than eloquently reproduced her comment and her complete lack of understanding for what the community was asking for and what they viewed as problems that the trail was bringing. So again, thank you for the history lesson. I appreciate it. And thank you for your efforts, regardless of how people feel about it. And again, when Metro comes before us, I hope everyone comes back and gives their same statements. So, all right. Let's move on to agenda item number 6, discussion on Southeast Sandy Avenue during snow and ice events. Mr. Travis Holton, now the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, councilors. You all have my staff report regarding the Sandy Avenue during snow and ice, and responding to some questions that came up after this last snow event. Don't really have anything additional to add to my report, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right. It was a very thorough report, Public Works Director. I appreciate it. Are there any comments or questions from council? Councilor White.
Yeah, I was going to copy these for everyone, but my printer ran out of ink, so I'll just pass them down to Kenda, but they're all the closures that occurred.
I have it.
You have them?
Are you talking about your pictures?
Oh, this is an addition to.
In addition to the pictures.
I kind of, I read the report and I thought it missed the main point is the steepness of the grades. Now, Sandy Avenue, if you're gonna go up it, and let's say it's an ice storm or a silver thaw like we get, those are about the worst conditions you can have for a road. The way up the hill is to avoid grades at all costs. And I think, it's just gravity and momentum that's gonna get you in trouble. Even if you have a 4-wheel drive or good tires, because the way the vehicle is just gonna get pulled down that grade. So the way I go up, and I've shared this with lots of other people in the community, and they follow this route as well, is where you go up. It's Kendall right here by Yield Pub. And then it gets you onto 2nd Street, which it goes kind of on the tail end of Buxton where it starts to bottom out. And it's not very steep there, and you're simply crossing the road. And now the very next right you can make is Dora. And it's a slight grade, but it's nothing compared to Buxton. It's still a pretty good grade, but you're only going, a few feet up that section of road. And now you make a left on Third, and Third becomes Sandy Avenue, and it's just like a promenade. And it's so protected with the trees that very little snow was even on that road. It was unplowed, it was unsanded. It was by far the safest way to get up and down. That's also where the hospital is. And it got pulled by staff without even, discussing it with council, because it always was declared the snow route, and it was always had certain protections because of that. Now in the report, it's sounding like that term doesn't mean anything to Public Works. But it means a lot to the people here in the city that use that route and rely on it. Now, you talk about safety concerns, like not having an adequate guardrail. To me, that's an easy fix, and it should have a guardrail on it. And the other thing that was talked about is the tree canopy, and it actually really protects that road from snowfall. When we had 8 inches of snow at my house down the hill, there was probably about an inch. Some spots were bare on that road. So you could take a look at it, of course, and see if there's any standing dead or limbs that look weak, and clear those out, this time of year. But, and I think there was also some concern that there's been talk about turning that into a bike and pedestrian only road, and I could see that easily becoming part of our connector to the spring water corridor, even though we were assured by Ray that it wasn't. And I was at that meeting too, and it was pretty extensive. But this last snowstorm, I hopped in the car with my wife, and she took a video just from her cell phone. But I think Kenda has that. I don't know if you want to wait until we go through the rest of the comment or show it now. But
No, you can show it now. If Kenda has it and has the ability to play it.
I have 3 videos.
it was a bad storm, as you can see. I'll try to figure out where we're at.
I was just gonna say, I don't even know where. Are you on? Oh, you're on. You're headed towards Sandy.
Yeah, I'm on Third
On Third.
Avenue, and you can see how light that grade is. The only steep part to get on this road is Dora, which is like half a block. And it's not as steep as any of the other access roads that were plowed. And this is all unplowed. Now, here's where the cliff part of the road is. There's a good guardrail on the turns, but there isn't any on the straightaway. It's hard to tell, but that snow is just a thin covering. You can see the grade though. The grade is what matters. And the next video is going to show you Buxton and 257th. And that they were being plowed and sanded all day long to no avail. And that's what those road closures I added into the record will show, how many times they opened and reclosed each of those roads.
Each of those roads, as in Buxton?
Buxton and 257 and 238. They were all shut down at one point, not simultaneous.
Not at the same time.
Yeah. Pretty close to the same time. What happened?
Hold on. There we go. Next video. I'm not sure what this is.
That looks like Buxton, we're coming down Buxton Hill,
Heading north.
heading north.
This is 7th Street coming up on the left right there.
Yeah,
And if you take a right, you're going to Troutdale School.
now you're starting, oh wait. Once you get on that grade, you're committed. And it's like a ski jump.
Yeah, who is driving? Because this is scary.
My wife's filming and I'm driving.
I would have done the reverse, Counselor White. I feel safer.
At least you're not doing both at the same time.
No, we're being really safe. I'm going slow. I have it in low gear. But I'm in a little Toyota Tacoma with brand new tires.
Normally they close this down. When we were kids, we slept down this.
We outlawed that a couple years ago. How about the next video? Oh, it's headed south.
And that's just pictures of, that's when they have the road shut down and these cars aren't making it. There's also a car that went off the road into the barber shop.
I will say, for the most part, when the road was shut down, it wasn't shut down because of lack of sanding or plowing, or, I mean, for the most part, I mean, I drove that road every single day during this storm, and it was normally shut down due to cars that were out there, passenger cars that were spun out perpendicular to the roadway or doubled up, basically double parked, but they were stuck on the roadway. And so anytime it was closed, I would say it was only closed for a short amount of time, because then as soon as they were pulled out by whoever pulled them out, I know it wasn't public works staff pulling cars out, but whoever pulled them out, then the road was opened up immediately after that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to cut on public. I think
Oh, no,
they're
I
doing
know.
everything they could. You're always gonna have someone that, you know, has
Shouldn't
more
be on the
confidence
road.
than their abilities allow. And, but, you know, it's just, the Sandy Avenue is just a far better choice for anyone to get up that hill.
Is there any other comments from council? Councilor Glantz?
Yeah, I've listened to a lot of both CAC and Parks meeting, and I know there's a lot of proponents for keeping Sandy as a road just because of that. I personally haven't ever been on the road because I go totally different directions, but I will say that, yeah, I've heard that a lot from committees and citizens.
I would encourage you to drive that road or even walk it during the summer. It's a beautiful road. It's probably my favorite road in Troutdale. No offense to everybody else's roads, but that's a great road. I have an intimate knowledge of that road from working on it for 4 years. So I love that road. Anybody else on council? All right, let's open up public comment. Well, we'll do public comment. So go ahead and approach the desk again. Oh, it's too late now. You're going up.
Is that behind Troutdale School?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. I was trying to know where you thought that was.
Yep. Anybody else wants just to make public comment? Now's the time. Tanny was standing up, so everybody else, I guess what we're gonna have to do is start making a line.
Good evening, Mayor, Lauer, City Councilors, Tanny Staffordson, Troutdale resident, and I wanted to comment because I have to be honest with you. I am the citizen in here that brings this up during public comment in the report. And I am not in any way, shape, or form trying to challenge Public Works with the job they do with the streets, or the job the county does, ODOT, any of those people. That wasn't my point. My point was just getting some information about what we do when multiple roads are closed. And I learned from reading the staff report that emergency vehicles are able to go once the road is closed, and I appreciate that. But my information was not gathered from sporadic social media reports. If you know me, I'm not a very social media guy, for the most part, but I just want to tell you what the county had, okay? So at 4:56 PM on February 22nd, 238 was closed, according to the county, Buxton was closed, and you were to avoid 257, okay? At 5:53, there was another stretch of 238 that was closed, Buxton was closed, and 238 was closed. At 7:44 PM, 257th was now closed. Maybe the other two were open by then, maybe they weren't, I don't know. But it does seem like there was a lot of roads closed. And this is something that they put out at the same time that evening, and they got Germantown and some of these on here, but they have Buxton closed, they have 238 closed, and they have avoid 257. So I think we have some hills here, we maybe have some problems. Okay, at 8:20 in the morning on the 23rd, 238 was closed again due to jackknife semi-truck and cars. So I don't know when it opened up and when it closed, but what I do know is at 9 o'clock in the morning, there was an announcement put out that Buxton and 257th were now open. So I can leave these with you.
Leave them with Kenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
But that's, I just wanted to kind of clear the air on that a little bit and just, you know, I think we did have some multiple closures simultaneously. And that's just something we probably have to deal with. Just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanny.
Yes.
Let's go Saul, then Rich, and then Will. State your name and city of residence for the record.
My name is Sol Pompeyo, and I own a restaurant Pompeyo. And for 15 years, I deliver food in the snow. And I can tell you, I can compare the job between Troutdale to Gresham. Troutdale do so much better job. I like all over because I deliver food everywhere in Troutdale, Fairview, Gresham. And I think so Troutdale do a great job. I have a special, I have Suburban 4-wheel drive, and I will change front and back, and I go everywhere. The problem every year when it's snow is in the truck stop. When the snow comes and they close the freeway, somebody needs to call the sheriff or make sure the trucks stop on one side or another side, because in some moments they block the whole freeway. That is the biggest issue every year. But I say in this year, yes, for a little bit, both streets are closed. But it was very little, I think so a couple hours, because I deliver food everywhere and I don't have any problem. If Buxton is closed, I take 257. You know, I think so make a mistake for a little bit somebody, but I don't think so it was a big deal. In my opinion, they do a great job this year. And I told you, I drive it everywhere. This is my perspective, sorry.
Thanks, Saul, appreciate it. Rich?
Rich Allen, Troutdale. Mayor, council. So I do the same thing a lot of you do. I look at that long sled down Buxton, and I go, I'm not doing that, and I'll take Sandy Avenue. It's less steep of a grade. And if you're coming up Buxton, you'll notice that as you're coming up Buxton, you hit a spot there where you have to add extra fuel to keep your momentum going up the hill. It gets steeper. It's noticeable. Maybe not so much on dry pavement, but it's really noticeable when it's icy and snowy. My suggestion would be is that you consider using Sandy Avenue and 3rd Street as at least a Blue V secondary snow priority route to give those less adventurous an alternative to going down the sled. Now, naturally, if it's really bad, I'm headed all the way to Fairview, going down that way. But anyway, I wish you would consider that. It is a valuable pathway, whether it's recognized by the city or not, it's a valuable pathway. And I'd like to add, since a fellow ran the stop sign when I was 16, I have not been in an accident since. So being chicken has served me well.
You put that juju out. Don't do that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. All right, thanks, Rich. Mr. Knight? I think this is the first time I've called people by name for public comment. I apologize.
Will Knight, Troutdale resident. Real quick, I just saw that this was Sandy Avenue was gonna be on the agenda tonight, so I wanted to just participate. Not too much to say other than definitely against any sort of future closure of Sandy Avenue at this point in time without more discussion with additional stakeholders. So I would suggest that eventually they look at restriping somehow and making sure that people know there are pedestrians and cars sharing the same space, because it is a very functional vehicle space that can be useful for both, but there should be a little more signage and striping to make sure people are aware. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Will. Did I already ask people on Zoom if they wanted to make public comment? I don't remember. If you would like to make public comment on Zoom, now is the time. All right, I'm going to close public comment. Any other comments or discussion from council? Yeah, Councilor White.
I think it's time that we, do some improvements on Sandy Avenue instead of trying to close it down and upgrade it so it actually gets plowed and sanded sooner than like a typical side street. It's not an arterial, but I definitely bumped up to a B. Is up there correct? You understand what I mean by that, Ray? I say B.
Well, the secondary on that list on the map, yeah.
It'd be easy to add a guardrail on, it is on the straightaway, but if the snow gets piled up high enough, it'd be nice to have a guardrail there. And,
I will say that for my part, I don't think us on council should direct or tell Public Works staff what roads should be classified as. I think our professionals, our department directors, and the employees that we have that handle this road maintenance are the professionals and determine what classification these roads should be. I understand the concern. I don't believe there's any discussion happening anywhere about whether or not we're going to shut the road down to vehicle traffic anytime soon or ever. And if there are, I completely oppose that. But in saying all of that, I do understand where you're coming from, Councilor White. The other concern I have is if we if we encourage people to take Sandy Road in the condition that it's in right now during an ice and snowstorm, there's very minimal precautions to keep people from sliding down an embankment. We are not prepared for it and I'm not saying we shouldn't be at all, but we're prepared for it on Buxton, on 257th, and then further, I wouldn't even say we're more prepared for it on 238th because of the improvements that the county has made on 238th Hill to protect the homeowners down at the bottom of the north of 238. The consequences of pushing or encouraging a city to drive on that road during a snow event, plowed or otherwise, I think is drastic. I think it's dangerous. I'm not saying the road is dangerous. The conditions as it is right now, adding snow, adding ice, I think, and pushing a lot of people onto that road with a false sense of security is dangerous. Now, I think there could be discussions about whether or not we invest in building up the infrastructure there. And I think Mr. Knight brought up a really good example of increasing signage to increase awareness that there's more people that I drive that road at least 3-4 times a week. and I come across bicyclists. It doesn't matter if it's raining or windy, the east wind is howling, there's cyclists, there's walkers, there's people with their dogs, kids everywhere, and it's a tight squeeze. Signage, I think, is a great idea, but I think using us to classify our road systems, I think that's a slippery slope, pun intended, on whether or not we should get into that business and take that away from our public works director / engineer. That's my opinion. And now I don't disagree with the intention behind it, behind what you're bringing up. Ray.
Yeah, I'll just, and I'm gonna only be short circuiting what the engineers should probably be saying, but I love Sandy Boulevard. I run Sandy Boulevard. There's a reason the Troutdale Trot runs up Sandy Boulevard.
Sandy Road, not Boulevard.
Sandy Road. Yeah, not the road. There's a reason that, because it is a very beautiful road. But we have to remember that it's on a very steep embankment, and to improve or widen that road would be a substantial cost because of the springs and the how steep that side of that hill is. If anybody wants to improve it, expect a very big bill. And we have to remember that the number of cars that Troutdale Road and 257th handle, I mean, on an average day, I don't know, Travis, something like 15 or 16,000 cars a day go up and down 257th. And if we start telling people they should be using Sandy, I'm really concerned the numbers of people that would increase there, the narrowness of the road, people are gonna jackknife out because we know we can't control what they do. And then it happens there, as the mayor said, one misstep and they're down at the Harlow House. And it's in its current condition, it cannot handle more traffic. And despite all that, we do sand it, we do plow it.
Yeah.
So it is available, that it's there. And I don't know whether it was a B or a C. It's a C. I don't think that really slowed down getting it plowed and sanded this year, as Travis showed you the pictures. So I don't know if the Travis wants to add any more at this point or not, but oh, finally, last thing, yes, there is no plans, nothing in the TSP that says we're going to close down Sandy
Good.
or stop it from being a regular road.
Thank
That's not a discussion.
Let me see if Travis wants to.
Yeah, I'll start by echoing Ray's comment. As you may recall, during the TSP process, or maybe this occurred before it ever got to the council, I don't recall, but there was in the early drafts of the TSP, and I think this actually was prompted by the town center plan. There was a proposal to convert that roadway later in the future to a partial, like a one-way street, and then the other half being a bike and pedestrian way. However, that did not survive the TSP process, so that's not in the TSP anymore. So as Ray said, there is nothing planned to do any sort of version like that. So hopefully that puts your mind at ease on that front. That has already been killed, as it were. A couple other things I'll note. Yeah, another comment of Ray's, the cost. It would not be a simple thing to put guardrails along that roadway. Modern vehicle protection guardrails are actually fairly hefty engineered structures, and when you have a weak embankment like that, it's very difficult to achieve the modern engineering standards in a situation like that. It ends up costing a lot of money to do so. The mention of signage, we do have some shared bikeway signs on that road already. We are in the process of actually replacing a bunch of our shared roadway signage around the city to the more current standard, and that will include infilling segments. That's something that we put a plan together for a few months ago, and I believe our operations folks are now chipping away at that around the city, including on Sandy Avenue. So there will be more updated and more shared roadway signage along that roadway if they haven't done it already. I haven't checked in on it lately to see how far they've gotten with that work. A couple of other things to note. As Ray said, we do plow and sand Sandy. So to any notion that we don't do that would be incorrect. We do that, and we know we do it because we track our sand plows or our snow plows. We know where they go and when they're there. And just finally, a note on grades. Absolutely right. Buxton is steep, and it gets steeper as you get above 3rd Street. It runs about 8 or 9% below 3rd Street, and then increases up, peaks out at about 13% as you get to the really steep part. So that's fairly steep for roadway. Sandy runs at about 5%, if my memory serves, and coincidentally, 257th runs at about 5%. It hits about 6 at its steepest point. So they're very comparable in their grades, Sandy and 257th Avenue. I think that's the only thing I really have to add to the conversation. So, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, sir. Councilor White?
Yeah, I just wanted to, to clarify that, I'm not trying to question the engineer's authority or anything like that. I'm trying to share local knowledge and maybe bring a perspective that you guys haven't thought of. And, I know you guys plow and sand it, but it's usually after the fact. It's not during the snowstorm. I saw how much they were plowing Buxton and 257th, and Sandy Avenue, which is to me a safer route, wasn't plowed till days later, as far as I know. And the previous snowstorm prior to the February 22nd one, some small limbs had came down and they actually closed the road. So that's where I started getting nervous, like, boy, are they really trying to shut this down for bike and pedestrians? Because I know it was brought up in the town center plan, but it was met with a lot of oppositions from our citizens group, as Sandy Glantz pointed out. So that's why I asked for this to be on the agenda. The bank is not unstable. We were told that by Chris Damjan when we vacated a right of way on that road, because that was my question. Well, what if we need to widen that road? And we just vacated that right of way to the west side of the road. And he assured me that that road was solid. It's basically solid rock. And in the 32 years I've lived below that hill, I've never heard of a landslide or seen so much as a tree fall off of that cliff. And there is room for a guardrail. There's a guardrail there on the turns already. It'd be easy to put one on the straightaway as well, in my opinion. So I think it should be looked at. And with that, I'll let it go.
If I could offer a couple of final comments. I appreciate that, Councilor White, for what it's worth when it comes to local knowledge. You're, for better or worse, your public works director has been with the city for 27 years, worked with many folks that have worked with the city much longer. And your public works operations superintendent has been with the city for just barely less than myself. So we have quite a long history of local knowledge on the issue, and well aware of Sandy Avenue's history. Had at times over the years in my role as an engineer studied it at great length. The soils there are not rock. There's actually a section at about 4th Street that historically did have slides. It actually has an underdrain system in it right now, and does have some slight subsidence that we're keeping an eye on. We have inclinometers there to monitor the progression of that, which thankfully has been slow. Certainly agree that there's probably room for guardrails, but room for guardrails does not mean that they're simple and easy and inexpensive to install, as I talked about earlier. Did experience a major failure back in the late 70s, early 80s, which is why that underdrain system is there now at that spot around 4th Street that I mentioned. And the last thing is just that you indicated you didn't think that it was plowed till days later. But I just wanted to correct that and say that it was plowed at about 3 a.m. the first night of the storm. So that was certainly not days later. That was within about 12 or 15 hours of the onset of the storm. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holton. Sandy, Councilor Glantz, sorry.
What's an inclometer?
Oh, an inclinometer. It is a device that records. How do I describe it? It's like a device that sits upright and records the angle of tilt over time.
Oh.
It's measuring how much the ground is moving in a certain direction, and we're measuring in very, 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 very small increments because the movement is very slow, thankfully, in this case. And so we can take readings on that over time and measure how much the slope has moved over long periods.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council? All right. Thank you, Mr. Holton. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 7, staff communications, Mr. Ray Young.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, our next meeting will be on May 16th. The council meeting on May 9th is canceled. We're able to put everything, combine it onto the 23rd agenda. Since you have 3 meetings this month and 3 meetings in June, we'll keep you just to 2 in May. But the 16th will be our committee selection. And you should have got an email today from Sarah. We have 19 applicants. Woohoo! So we've got a good group of people coming for committees, and we'll be doing that. I'm not sure our starting time with that number. We may be starting at 6, but we'll get you that information soon. Number 2, and the only other thing is AMR has confirmed that they're going to be there in the park on Memorial Day weekend through Labor Day, and they have a big crowd of lifeguards this year, so we may have some few extra folks down there keeping it safe down there. So that's cool to hear they're doing that again. And side note for the record and everybody in Radio Land, even though it will be 80 degrees on Saturday, the Sandy River is still 32.5 degrees, okay? Don't jump in the river thinking it will be just sweet and dandy. We are going to be having signs up warning people that it is still very, very cold in the river, and that will take your breath away very fast. And we don't have lifeguards till Memorial Day. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Council communications, Councilor 1.
I get to go first.
You get to go first.
This is amazing. So I was just trying to figure out how to say this. It's always funny. I find myself like commenting on someone comes to present something. I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. And then someone comes in with a totally thing I'd never thought of before. And then you're kind of like, well, okay, I hear what you're saying. So I wanted to say, like, I hear what you're saying. And this just kind of rolls into my other thing. So I thought about this a lot over the last week. After we had budget committee and things that were said, and I just went through the first budget committee. I've only been doing this for 4 months, and how do we impact the city that we live in, and how do we keep it safe, and how do we grow the city in a way that's best for the majority of people? And there was talks about your home budget, whether you want to balance it, you want to save, what are we saving for? There's things we need to think about in the future, a rainy day fund, etc. I talked to Ray about like why a city budget is different, and I just wanted to say and just kind of like say it out loud. So I think that what I think of as our budget for the city and what's important are so many things that I would never have thought about before after coming and doing this. I'm gonna say it's a job, but whatever we do exactly. There's so many other things to think about that I would never have seen. You don't see where your money goes and why it goes there, and whether you think it's silly or important kind of doesn't really matter. There's checks and balances in order, and I think that that's something I'm learning about and learning why we do those things. On the flip side, I think that it's important that we keep in mind of why we do this, what our taxpayer and what our money is going towards. And I want to make sure that I am going to strive to achieve putting that money back into our community and things that we can see, use, and be thankful for, and not putting off something because we might be worried about a recession or something coming down the road. Is that we all work hard for our money, we pay taxes for a reason, and we want to be able to see what that goes for, whether it's to see our schools be successful, be nice, and have a pillar of a community that you can be proud of, parks that we can access and walk around that are pretty, and you're not wondering why there isn't a tree here or the grass is mowed. And I think that it's really important to I don't want to say spend the money, but put the money back into the community, the things that we can see, use, and be proud of. And I think I've seen Troutdale. I mean, I've lived here for a long time, but I've seen it grow. There's a path around Sunrise that happened a while ago. And it's just like those things make it nice to go around, interact with your other community members in a place that is safe, open, and inviting. And I find it pleasant to go walk around Sunrise and meet other people with their dogs and walk and say hi to the same people that I would never have interacted with before. If that thing wasn't there. And so when I think about these things, whether it's improving a road or improving a website to put in a suggestion to improve a road, like these are all things that are like we can use as citizens and whatnot. And then just to kind of, I wanted to piggyback on that and say that in terms of the paths and these access points between one point and another, I still feel like these are really important things to do. And it's, and I know Rich said this much more eloquently, and since he's had, some experience in it, is that I don't want to sit here and stereotype. I think we stereotype a lot of things, whether it's the housing unit that wants to go in, or it's these paths and the people that are on them. And, because of certain events that's happened in our history over the past few years, I don't want to sit here and stereotype that having a path is automatically going to lead to destruction. It's not going to, and it's going to lead to crime, and it's going to lead to an unsafe environment. I just can't wrap my brain around that. And so I strive to take a step back and not stereotype and not jump into those conclusions. And now that I feel like I'm in a spot that where how do we make a difference? How do we help solve or aid in this, I don't want to say it's a pandemic or a problem, what can I do? What can we do as a whole to help? And I think one thing is, holding people accountable, but just not putting things off because we're scared of what it would do is, I don't think, the right way to think about it. And so my goal, I strive is to, one, not stereotype, not pigeonhole myself into like avoiding something because it's scary, but attack that problem and see what we can do. Again, all with the idea of keeping our community safe and like pretty. That's kind of my best words. So anyways, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Counselor. I appreciate it. Counselor Glantz.
No, just nothing special. Want to thank Ray again for getting all that RDPO stuff put together. I was kind of like, oh my God, it's 50 pages. So now we just have to actually get it done. Yeah, we'll go from there. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Counselor Caswell.
Yeah, nothing for me.
Counselor Wittry.
Yeah, I'll just chime in very quickly and not be as long-winded, but I will say that, sorry, but as coming on here, public safety has to be top of mind, and we do that hand in hand, and I'll just chime in behind Councilor One is, yeah, we want to encompass everybody and everything, but public safety has to be important. It's important to me, it's important to my neighbors, important to the community, and I know I have chirped on Ray as I was on public safety and that committee. It is important, and I think the community looks to us to make sure we hold ourselves to a certain standard. But also, thank you, Ray, for all you do, and I appreciate your staff, and that's all I have.
Councilor White.
Yeah, it's kind of appropriate that it's volunteer week because we lost a really good one with losing Marv Wardella. So if you get a chance, read his obituary. He was really an extraordinary man and did a lot in his life. So I'll miss him. And the Troutdale Historic Society celebrated its 40-year anniversary this weekend. They had a presentation at Glen Auto Park. And Councilor Rittman is now once again their president of the Historic Society. And then I read kind of a troubling email from Ashton Simpson, our new Metro Councilor, and our community enhancement money that we get for having a transfer station in our city looks like it's going to be shared with Fairview and Wood Village, and then that they've added East County Rising as part of the board to decide how that money is going to be spent. So, I was worried something was going to happen. This is about the 4th time I've had it on as a council concern, and now it's turned into something that I definitely didn't want to see happen. I don't know if we can reel that one back in or get this guy in our council so we can talk to him in person.
Yes, in your email box is a response from the mayor and myself. We
Okay.
included an invitation to get himself to one of these meetings since he missed the December one. So yes, we felt the same way about that
Yeah.
email. And so the response is in your mailbox.
And I appreciate, Ray, how you handled public comment tonight with the homeless. Ray means it, and he's helped me out several times with situations that I've seen throughout the city. And he means it. He says he'll do something about it.
Right, like now I'm sending an email to Joe Sturgey to deal with the Hensley vehicle problem. So I don't like things waiting. Thank you, Councilor White.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll say Marv was a big figure that I didn't know a whole lot about until unfortunately after he passed. And so I found out he was a Multnomah County, he was a sergeant with the Sheriff's Department. He was the former mayor of Fairview, 83 to 87, I believe. Then a business owner in Gorge Winds Aviation for a long time and a big pillar in the Troutdale Airport community. I sent off an email asking the port to consider renaming the airport after him, just because of the type of person he was and how much his reach went, and they quickly denied it. So they said they're not basically they said they don't rename their airports, but they would consider erecting a statue in his honor. So there's something I think more that the community can do to show their respects for Marv and all that he did, especially here as a planning commission member for so long. So I think this Saturday, now I don't remember the time, but there's an event at the airport for him with community members, friends getting together. There's going to be beer and bluegrass music. So everybody was invited. So other than that, yeah, I think I share the concerns with everybody. Like I said, Jim came here with the 40-mile loop land trust with a proclamation that he wanted me to read, saying what a great thing the 40-mile loop is and what it means to this community. And I told him no. I told him I'm not going to read that proclamation because I don't believe in the words that they were asking me to read and be representative of Troutdale. So I don't blame Jim for that, though. I blame our Metro councilors and the people that are elected to ensure that the community and the things that our taxpayers pay, our tax dollars pay for, are kept at a standard that's respectful and meaningful for all the communities it serves. And I feel personally, this is not the position of the city of Troutdale or any of you on council, that they have failed in that manner for many decades now. And so I hold mainly Metro accountable for that. It was a conversation that we had a couple of years ago with Council President Lynn Peterson, where she told the City Troutdale Council that in 10 years, I believe that was 8 years ago, that she will have solved the homeless problem in the Metro region as a whole. She's got 8 years to finish that. I told her that I was going to be here throughout those years to hold her accountable. I don't think that's going to happen. I hope all of you do that instead. But she, like I said, I hold Metro accountable for a lot of that. So we need to do our best as representatives of this community to hold them accountable. And if trails do get built, then we need to make sure that, like Councilor Wittrin said, that the safety of everybody involved is kept close to heart. So that way we don't let the people that take advantage of trail systems like that creep into Troutdale. And yes, it is a stereotype. And yes, I struggle with that as well. But working in the streets for so many years, it's difficult to see how much more compassion we can give the people that only exploit it. And they exploit the nature of our area by taking advantage of all that compassion and then leave trash and unmentionable items for small business owners and people walking around their communities to pick up because they don't have a regard for community. Now, that's not everybody. at all. And I understand that that kind of was painting a broad brush, but it's not at all everybody that is experiencing homelessness or living unsheltered in our communities. But there's an old saying that Grandma Lauer always used to say, that something about a bad apple. So we don't want it to ruin the bunch. So we need to work hard to make sure it doesn't. So with that, Councilor Ritma is not here to adjourn, so someone else gets to do it.
There was a hand up, I think, you had a comment about Marv, I think?
No, that was 5 or 5 o'clock.
5 p.m.
Five,
Saturday.
Oh, thank you. 5 p.m. on Saturday evening at Gorge Winds Aviation for Marv's going away party.
Mayor Lau, I'll make a motion that we adjourn for this evening.
Second.
All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Yeah, I talked to Shane.
Thank